All right, welcome back to the 1947 Ford build. All right, it's been a while since we've been on this thing, or since I filmed anything happening on this thing. Since you guys have seen it last, which I think we were working on the bed floor last. I've got this back patch in on the back of the cab where it was really rotted out. What had happened was, I don't know, however many owners ago, they had drilled a hole through the back of the cab into the bed and then run a big bolt and fender washers through in order to pinch the seat belt, because they had installed seat belts. So they pinched the cab and the bed together, and then it held all kinds of scuzz and organic material, and it rotted out. So I had to cut that whole section out. That's all replaced. Unfortunately, my camera was down for a couple weeks. I'm now filming on a GoPro, by the way. There might be a small learning curve here. I've got the old door latch holes welded shut here, as you can see, both sides. So the pillars there have been smoothed out. I am retaining the holes for the rubber bumpers, top and bottom. I've got the bottom seal retainer replaced down here. That's a new unit there from Steel Rubber Products. The old one was all rotted and destroyed, so it came out. So that's in, and now we've kind of jumped from those back up underneath the dash here. I had my VintageAir unit mocked up underneath there and got it sort of fit where I wanted it, but now I've got to finalize the Cowl Vent here, because that's getting switched over to electric with this actuator. I've got to get my windshield wiper motor mocked up, and then the VintageAir unit can go back in, and I can figure out where the bulkhead fittings are going to go, where I can fit those, and we'll go from there. These have been all welded shut up here. Just trying to plug up as many holes in this cab as I possibly can. So I'm sort of picking up where I left off a long while ago. I've got the brackets on here for the electric actuator, and I'm going to go ahead and mock all that stuff up, make sure it still works. So I'll take you guys along. Alright, we've got that all hooked back in there, and I've got two bronze thrust washers between each pivot point. It rolls up, rolls down. I've got my bracket. I built that a long time ago. Welded on here. Okay, this is the mechanism I have that operates the Cowl Vent, and it tucks way up inside. This is just an electric actuator here, and I've got roughly a 2-to-1 ratio here, and then this will end up connecting to the Cowl Vent via a linkage arm. But I gotta get this tacked up, this bracket tacked up underneath the dash. So let's get to it. Okay, I'm getting ready to do final assembly on this. You can see we've got the Cowl Vent here. Got this little tiny bracket with this linkage arm. I've got a heim joint rod end on one side of that because of the movement that you have to deal with. The other side is just threaded, bent at 90. Then we've got a pivot point here. This is reinforced because this pivot point has a lot of the strain on it. And then back here we've got the actuator, the rear mount stud. Here, here, and here is where that bracket is welded. And then I'm gonna have to deal with a little bit of a clearance issue when I get this defroster vent in, but we'll get it. I'm not worried about it. So it's really tight working quarters. I'm gonna go ahead and get this assembled and then I'll bring you guys back. So that actuator is capable of 225 pounds, plus we've multiplied our force slightly here by about 3/4 again. And you can see it is fighting a little bit there. Now I should mention I did order another rod end. I wanted this to be a double rod end on here, but I got a little impatient waiting for it. But I think that's gonna help. Okay, so we've got that under dash mounted up and mocked in so far. I've got a couple parts coming in the mail today, but I'm gonna move to the front of the dash now. And the way this is gonna get laid out is AC vent, and 2 of the gauges. I wanted to leave a little bit of space in the center. We're gonna have the AC control approximately right here, ignition, and then I've got to put a wiper control somewheres, and I'm thinking possibly in the center. We'll see. I figured I'd leave the space there, and if I can use it, I can use it, great. But anyway, that brings us over to the dash here, and I do have the dash insert, original insert, and the chrome trim ring. Problem is the chrome trim ring is just a little bit too tight for the gauges to fit in. So I've got this piece of aluminum here, and I'm going to trim it to fit back here and slightly overhang. Then I've got to take these notches out for the retainer, top and bottom, and I want to cut those fairly tight so that they locate this piece of aluminum. So what I did, I held these up and I pencil marked them and I cut notches in. Now I've got to do the top, and then I've got to get them notched deep enough that it'll slide in nicely. So let's get to it. Oof, I gotta take one more slice off that. Alright, maybe that did it. Let's check it out. Okay, check it out. I've got the defrost vent here, but when I put in my solenoid up here, the bracket that I made is gonna slightly, ever so slightly interfere. Now over here I've got the ones that came with my VintageAir unit, and they don't quite fit. Let's check it out. You can see they're a little thin, plus it won't go in there all the way. But when I first got this truck, I made my own out of PVC. What I did was I ended up taking a PVC T and I capped the ends, and then I made the holes line up with my holes on the stock unit, and then I cut the slot, and it fit really nicely. But I did have to modify this one just now ever so slightly to fit around that bar. I didn't want to lose any of the spacing here, but I was able to just kind of give it a contour there out of foil, and then I put some 1-minute epoxy on top. It's worked out well for me in the past, and it seems to be working out fine right now. This is really warm. It's a 1-minute epoxy, so it lights off quick. Gonna work out just fine on the passenger side. I hope the driver's side we don't run into that problem. So as I'm editing this footage, I'm noticing that somehow my settings got moved to time-lapse, and all of this footage is fast-forwarded without any sound, and I can't figure out how to bring the sound back or slow it down to normal speed. So as I get this GoPro figured out, hopefully it gets a little better. In the meantime, bear with me. Let me get this marked for trimming. So I was looking at this a little closer. This shaft runs inside of this thread housing. So I can trim this outer thread housing. That's going to leave me with this at whatever length I prefer. I'll start right there. Okay, so thread gets trimmed here. Shaft gets trimmed here. Let's go figure out how we can best do that. I'm just working over this AC vent here a little bit with the file, trying to give it some nice contours, refine it a little bit, and I think I'm going to hit it with some black paint. Alright, I've got the AC kind of mocked up back in there. Got one of the mounting straps modified and in place here, and the other one's in the very back there, a little dark. But I want to add a third and a fourth. I'm going to try to use that factory nut cert there. First I want to finish up the dash here before I mount that up. But I do have one that I'm going to add over here. I've got a stud welded up underneath here. I'm going to add a nutsert here on this open part. Now the only thing I have to contend with is hoses, but with that EZflex or EZclip system, that high flex hose system, I think it will be okay. The hoses are going to run out and down, and there's going to be a kick panel here, like a false panel. I'm going to add a strip of steel here and here to mount that panel to, but then the hoses are going to run behind it and pop out here, which will put them in the fender well, so they won't even be in the engine bay. They'll come through the fender well, and then they'll pop up to the AC compressor, which will be up in here somewhere. Okay, I got a couple fender washers here. They're 3/8 hole for that nutsert to fit through. One's a large fender washer, one's a little bit smaller of a fender washer. First thing we got to do is add a little tooth. All right, there we have it, a little bit of 36 grit tooth. The other thing we got to do is add a little bit of contour. So it looks like about a 1 3/8 hole. Alrighty, so last night you saw me cutting this thing out. I've got it all welded up now. And that's basically going to be the bulkhead for the AC and the heater lines. And that will go in right here. And then, as I mentioned to you guys before, this area gets covered with a kick panel, so the hoses are going to run behind that. They're going to pop out down here, which is inside of the fender, fender runs here, and then they'll pop out by the compressor, etc., etc. So what I've done is I've marked here where I need to cut. I'm going to cut on this line here and a little bit back from that edge. That gives me a lap weld, and we'll get her welded in. Okay. And that's going to fit in just like so. Let me get that pushed into place, mocked up. I'll bring you guys back. All right. Here we are. Also, I added these strips here, 1-inch strips, and if you look in line here, those are for the door panels or the kick panels to hook to. I'll just run the self tapper through the kick panel into those. I did the same thing over here. Then what I'm going to do is I'll come back probably in these spots back in here. Sorry about that, the lighting is terrible, but anyway, in the spots back here I'll probably run a brushable seam sealer, and then on this outside here I'll run a seam sealer just to kind of give it a nice round look. And then if you come and look up underneath here, that's all welded into place, welded solid. I'm gonna run the grinder, dress it a little, and then I'm gonna run a seam sealer on this outside also. So that's where all the AC will come through. Worked out pretty well. All right, so I've got the fuse panel here. This is the EZwiring kit. And I want to make a little mounting plate. You can see there's accommodations here for a backing plate. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just draw something up. 2 by 4 3/4. You know, it sort of cracks me up. You look around the shop and you got all these tools and, you know, hammers and wrenches and all kinds of hand tools, and it's really changing really rapidly. You know, a laptop, electronic computer, you know, a computer is quickly becoming a fixture in the shop. Okay, I've got this. I had to do a little bit of tuning with the file, but let's see what we've got here. There we go, just like that. And then you got the release tab over here. Boom. All right, let's go weld that in. Now we're gonna have to block that off of the side of the truck a little bit, so we have a little bit of a gap. Okay, I welded on some rod, just some quarter rod there. It would have been easy to have drawn in some flaps that I could have just broke down, but this works. Okay, that's what we've got. We'll weld it into place. And next, I want to tackle the AC drain. Ay, ay, ay. Well, that was my single-use spring bender. All right, let's see where we left off here. So I've got that tube coming out, and it bends down and runs here. And I figure if I need to, I can probably wedge a piece of tube on there and extend it further if needed. And again, I'll probably put a little thin coat of brushable seam sealer along here, kind of clean it up a little bit, but it is definitely watertight. And then as far as getting it to adapt here, I think when I pull this minigen out, I'm gonna see what kind of sealer they used. This is just a barb fitting that's glued in there. And I'll maybe pull it out and epoxy my own in there. We'll see. All right, I've been working on getting some of these brackets made for mounting the relays to the fuse panel, etc. You know, I've been using my plasma cutter over there, the CNC plasma cutter, the Langmuir, to make these. And you know, there's something lost using the machine to cut everything out, not making everything handmade. But I'll tell you what, it sure is nice pulling these things off. I'm drawing up a reference line in them for the brake. I'm going to draw this one out. You know, and they're coming out absolutely perfect. So you know, like I said, love hate, but boy, it sure is nice having this stuff come out right the first time. So we're getting these welded in behind the panels where everything is going to be hidden. All right, so today we're back on the panels here for the wiring. Now this is my Ron Francis standalone engine harness here, and it's got to run into the cab. And this bank of relays and these 4 fuses need to be mounted, and then this is what plugs into the ECM. The ECM is going to be mounted up and underneath the dash, most likely, more than likely, but I want these 4 fuses here and these relays to be behind this panel along with my regular fuse block, which is right here. So I've got to figure out how I can route all of this, and then I also am punching through right here for the wiring that goes to the rear of the truck, which is going to be fuel level, lights, maybe neutral safety switch, I'm not sure. That stuff that goes that direction. Any of this stuff that goes into the engine bay is going to punch through up here in the factory location, which is going to be all of this, and then a large chunk of the EZwiring harness. You know, this is the, like I said, this is the Ron Francis standalone engine harness. And you know, I got this thing, I've been moving it around a little bit, but look at this, I've already got wires pulling out. You think when you pay, you know, $500 for a standalone engine harness, it would be a little better put together than that. The big draw for me was having all the factory plugs, you know, the weather-tight, watertight factory plugs. But this right here, that's a fail, big time fail in my book. So I was just laying on my back welding up here, and if you look closely you can see I welded 3 washers on. There's a washer there, a washer there, and a washer up here, and what those are going to do is they're going to help me hold the ECM down. We need to make a couple of little hold downs now, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So this here is the ECM, and that's about 1.8 inches tall, about 2 inches tall. Okay, now we're gonna heat these up, bend them over to a 90. Let me go clean them up on the grinder a minute. I think that'll work. As long as they don't try to bend that corner there. You know, maybe I'll put a chisel on there and kind of distort that a little. Okay, so I just quick threw a couple of tacks on there. I turned my wire speed up, and it looks like that's going to do the trick. You know, these little kits now, love Amazon, hate Amazon, whatever your stance is, but a lot of these kits, you know, the variety kits on stuff which wasn't necessarily available to us 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever, man, it's sure changed life. You know, one thing I've been trying to keep in mind too is rattles. I can't stand rattles, and a lot of this metal on metal, loose metal, etc. is exactly what gives you lots of rattles. When we come back through and we undercoat all this, that will help. But just bearing it in mind throughout the project, I think, is the biggest help. Okay, you can see there what we're working with. You know, and speaking of rattles, look at this right here is the perfect example. You can see that you get a little bit of vibration in that, and that's just going to be rattling right on that. So this bracket needs to either be cut off or need to slip a piece of rubber or something in there. I might need to make those a tiny bit longer. We'll see. But that's what we got for now. Okay, so I started editing some of the footage, and I was like, man, the lighting in my cab is terrible. The camera was doing it no justice. So I took one of my spare shop lights and I put it up in here. That should help with any of the future filming. I might even leave it in there as a dome light. I kind of like it. Look at this. But anyway, I thought we would show some of the progress here. So I made up these little brackets here. They kind of stand off the edge of the cab a little bit, but I have relays over here for the VintageAir system. And then I did the same thing over there because I have some relays that go, they go with like the flashers and I want to say maybe like headlights or something like that for the engine harness. I'm sorry, for the vehicle harness. So that way I can screw those on there with some self-tappers, and they, you know, they stand off the edge of the cab. So those are in. I added these bars here so I can zip tie the lines to them or attach the lines to them. Same over there. Now down in this corner, I'm gonna have to come through with the rear of the vehicle wiring. It's gonna drop right on top of the frame if I punch through there, similar like I did here. But I'm just gonna use a regular grommet and go through there. I don't need to add a bulkhead like I did here. So you can see up in here, this is what we ended up with the wire ladder or the wire rack, whatever you want to call it. ECM mounted up in there, and solenoid. So we're getting everything kind of tucked up in there real nice. Hopefully we can continue. We finished up defrost gut. It slips up in there like so, and it barely misses everything under here. Got the condensation tube here. Now this all gets sprayed again with some sound deadening bed liner type stuff, similar to what I did on the bottom side, because I'm not doing a carpet kit in here. It's going to just be steel, spray and bed liner over top of the steel. Yeah, so all the wiring, all the relays, everything's going to be hidden up back in here. And the engine harness and the front of the vehicle harness are both going to punch through right in here somewhere.
So anyway, I think we'll conclude there. I'm really having a hard time. I'm at a crossroads as to what to do with my gauges here. And I've been shopping around, and I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm sort of on the fence about what to do here. I wasn't 100% happy with not having this symmetrical, with having my AC control panel set off to the side. And now I'm looking at a few different options for the air ride management. So this is on hold currently, as is this. I got my eye on a few different options there, and we'll see. Like I said, it's on hold for now.